It's Monday, but it's Tuesday actually, because yesterday was a holiday. But this is Coffee with the Coaches, our awesome podcast, which I just realized the name of our podcast is like the smallest font on our backdrops here. So maybe we'll have our guy work on that.
Yeah, you have to look for it a little bit.
Yeah, you have to look for it a little bit, but that's our thing. That's kind of one of our things is that we want to remain hidden. We're like a secret
The
podcast,
best
right?
podcast you've never heard.
Best podcast you've never heard and that nobody ever listens to. But if you happen to be scrolling through Facebook and you see this guy in a purple shirt, it's purple or kind of a pinky purple. I don't know. What do you think, Peter? You look all right?
Yeah, it's right in the middle, pink purple.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. And so if you stumble across us, we are here once a week. We try to jump on and really talk about what it says above us: business mindset, entrepreneurship. We kind of jump all over the place. I don't even know what we talked about last week, but I'm sure it was crazy good and really, really deep and stuff like that. But I do remember from last week, I said we were going to get into a little bit more meat and potatoes, like something that people can sink their teeth into, not always go philosophical, right?
Yep.
And so I kind of thought about this whole thing on negotiations because you and I live in a world of negotiations, right? I mean, all of our businesses require negotiations, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So negotiation is always one of those topics I think you can talk a lot about. So I got a little bit of a presentation, but I wanted to start with a tad, just a wee little bit of philosophy because I can't help myself. I'm addicted. And it's from the Daily Stoic. It's from today. I did a reel on it this morning and it got a lot of likes. So I think the message hit. And the title is The Philosopher's School is a Hospital, right? And this is the quote by Epictetus. It says, Men, the philosopher's lecture hall is a hospital. You shouldn't walk out of it feeling pleasure, but pain, for you aren't well when you enter it. Right. And then Ryan Holiday goes on to say that, have you ever been to physical therapy? Right. No matter what the name implies or how many people you see lying about getting massages, it's not a fun place to be. It turns out that healing hurts. And I can attest to that because I'm sitting here right now, this moment, with an ice machine on my left knee, which was just replaced less than a week ago. And I'm going through physical therapy and it hurts. Um, the trained expert know exactly where to exert pressure and what to subject to stress so that they can strengthen where the patient is weak and help stimulate the areas that have atrophied. Stoic philosophy is a lot like that. Some observations or exercises will touch one of your pressure points. It's nothing personal. It's supposed to hurt. That's how you'll develop the will to endure and persevere through life's many difficulties.
Mm. I think if anybody has had physical therapy before, you can extract the memory of just how painful that is, but how necessary it is to get to where you need to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, everything about what they say, right? I mean, it's supposed to hurt. It's kind of like, that skit. I don't know who it was, Chris Rock or whatever. I mean, it's like, it's like it's called work for a reason, you know what I mean? It's like because it's work, right? Like otherwise it'd be called play. I mean, like
Yeah.
let's call it what it is. Like these things, we're not supposed to go through life just, living, you know, at um at our whimsy, right? I mean, we've
Mm.
got to kind of do some introspection, and that actually does lead us into this whole topic of negotiation because I think that in order to be a kick-ass negotiator, you have to be really in tune with who you are, number one, and you have to be a really keen observer of the outside world, number two. And I think to draw another parallel to our world of Stoic philosophy, you got to be able to see all of that stuff that's outside of the negotiations for what it is, just stuff, right? And assign no value to it or no labels to it, right? I mean, that's an important part of negotiations is remaining objective,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I think of some of the people who I know that negotiate at an incredibly high level. Also, shockingly enough, have to be some of the best listeners that I've ever met, meaning they're like a sponge. They just are taking in information from all sorts of places, and retaining it and categorizing it, sort of it prioritizing it, I should probably say. Um, it's really a well-rounded school set of skills. We
Yeah.
call it negotiation, but it's a whole bunch of different tools and skills that people develop really well.
Yeah, and there's one quote in this packet that we're going to go through right now that to me sums up, what the negotiations are. And I want you to kind of see what your one thing is when we go through this. So as they say, let's like jump right to it, jump to the videotape. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that, Peter? Does it
Yeah,
look
I
like
got it.
in the screen here? All right, so this first slide, there's a couple of intro slides that I got rid of, but this first slide just says top negotiators predict the future. Do you agree or disagree? And I saw this first slide, and at first I was like, well, no, I mean, nobody predicts the future. But then I understood the nature of the question is that, yeah, I mean, there is a sense of you can predict the future because if you're good at negotiating, then you've got a high success rate, right?
Yep,
Isn't part of negotiations going in with an end goal in mind?
absolutely. And also, um, predicting the future is also being able to like look at a situation from a holistic perspective and look at the whole thing, and start to see how things unfold naturally, and then kind of guiding it there with your, sort of gently guiding those things along. And that to me kind of can predict the future.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think it's also, you kind of gave me that idea of spatial awareness, right? I mean, looking into the past even to glean information from the past that's going to help you with this particular negotiations that's going to get you to this future point, right?
Yep.
So you kind of do it through space and time and everything else. So there is an aspect of, good negotiating that can almost seem like, well, let me just give you a case in point. How many times have you and I heard or either uttered these words myself? I knew exactly that, I'm sorry, I knew that we would land exactly there,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
On a certain price or whatever it was, right? I mean, it's like
Yes.
amazing once you have mastered this or done, this enough times, you do get to have this almost sixth sense as well that you just know like where you're going to end up and how it's going to go. So that's
Yeah,
kind of,
you're able to sort of predict the future based on what the other party's putting out there for information. You start to like put the puzzle together in your own mind. You can see clearly, okay, that's where we're
correct.
going to land. Yep.
Right. So that takes us to emotional intelligence, right? And this is covers all of those things that you just mentioned, which was perfectly timed. Because we all know that in order to be a good negotiator, you got to have a high EI, right? Emotional intelligence. You can't do it without that. I mean, there just is no way. It's just one of those things I think is an absolute truism because I'm trying to think of somebody with a really, really low emotional intelligence that could be good at negotiations. I mean, unless it was so process driven, whatever that negotiation was, you know what I mean? I guess then somebody that could succeed in that way, but I still think that you got to have an aspect of this. So, what is emotional intelligence? Self-awareness, self-control, social awareness, and relationship management. And I look at these four and I say, to me, two of them are inward facing and two of them are kind of outward facing, if you think about it, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So self-awareness, we got to know, we got to be in tune with what the hell is going on inside of us. Stepping into a negotiation. Let me just ask you this, Peter. Have you ever stepped into a negotiation you were having a bad day? Perhaps you would have a fight with Karen the night before, or no, that would never happen. You guys are too good of a couple.
Or
But
fighting during the negotiation.
right, exactly. No, I mean, like, you go into a negotiation, I guess, just not feeling your greatest.
Absolutely. Or maybe you rushed into it a little bit and you weren't ready to respond, and you didn't have the discipline, or I
Right.
didn't have the discipline. Put a cork in it for a little bit and settle down. get in position and, mentally in position and then move forward. Yeah, absolutely.
And so how did those generally end up?
Not great.
Right.
Not great. Frustrating.
Typically, those are the ones that either are, a complete drag on our existence, or, or they're the ones that we lose, right? I mean,
Yeah, we
because
lose, or maybe what you do have a meeting of the minds, and you're never quite happy with it. You just feel like you left a little out there, or you didn't do your best. You didn't
right.
get your best result.
So some people might actually ask this following question here, Peter, and that is based on like how do I check in with myself, and like how do I determine, what's my self-awareness, right? Because that's kind of a new thing for a lot of people. Not everybody is really tapping into their self-awareness. So here's a quick 2-minute drill. We actually did this last week, I think. And just these three things, right? All you have to do is to tap into your own awareness. Let's say you're going to go into a high stakes negotiation, right? Whatever your business is, you're going in, and this could be worth a lot of money. Um, think about these questions. Notice the state of your body on a spectrum of energy ranging from very tired to very energized. Where do you fall today? Scan your body. Notice how it feels. Are you hungry? Are there places where you feel particularly tense or relaxed? Like, think about that. I mean, all of those would affect my ability to negotiate.
Yeah.
If I'm hungry, you damn well, I'll be thinking about, wanting a roast beef sandwich than, trying to get the highest and best price for my clients.
Yep.
Right? So, and these are easy to do. I mean, this is like a 2-minute, like easy thing, people. So it's not like you have to sit there and be like, oh, I can't sit and, meditate for half an hour to see how I'm feeling or tap into myself. No, you got to sit there and just say, am I tired? Am I energized? Am I good? Am I bad? Whatever. And then number two, you take note of your thoughts and their traffic level. Thoughts pass through the mind all day, popping in and out constantly. And if each thought was a car, what would the traffic level be? If it's a busy highway, a quiet country road, somewhere in between, that matters as well. If you've got a 6-lane highway going through your head, Peter, I guarantee you that you will miss things in negotiations. You will miss questions that you're supposed to ask. You will miss clues that the other side gives you, right? I mean,
Yep.
can't help it. And then notice
Right.
your emotions, whether you consider yourself emotional or not, your emotions are with you every minute of the day. You might be calm, curious, enthusiastic. You may feel more neutral, angry, or stressed, and then you can, at least what you can do something about. So that's how you tap into your self-awareness. Self-control is really what we talk about every day and week, you and I, Peter. I mean, that's the stoic stuff, right? The self-control,
Yes.
being able to contain yourself. What usually happens in a negotiation when somebody loses their control?
Yeah. They things can break down. I mean, the discussion itself can break down. The negotiations can break down.
Right.
I think of this self control as the having the awareness of what delayed gratification and what that can bring, as opposed to that immediate gratification. Like, oh, let's just take it. Oh, I want to be done with this. It's uncomfortable here, and no deal land. Let's just wrap it up.
Oh, we've had to fight ourselves, and we've had to fight our clients, right? I mean, there's
Yes,
times our
yes,
clients are just like, no, 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 just take it, take it. Yeah. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you. I really think we can get another 100,000, 200,000, whatever it might be, right?
right.
Um, Social awareness, being able to read the room. We're going to get into all of these anyway, and then relationship management, self-explanatory. I mean, that's going to show up really interestingly using the disc, which I know is a tool you and I both love. So
Mm.
let's jump into this. So social intelligence, right? The situational radar, the presence, authenticity, clarity, empathy, and being able to take perspectives. That's what social intelligence is. Like, negotiations don't happen in a vacuum, right?
Yep, yep. I love situational radar.
Yeah.
Um, to be unaware of the situation can really put your position in jeopardy, um,
I mean,
quickly.
it's almost like the big rocks. I mean, like if you don't get the situation, I mean, you have no
Right.
chance of figuring out the small stuff, like the nuances, right? Or the emotions or the feelings that are behind things. Like this to me really is the big rocks. But you're right. And there's a lot of people that miss this.
Yep.
And they don't see that the person on the other side of the negotiation is like inches away from a breakdown, or you know what I mean, or is inches away from walking away, right? I mean, like you've got to be able to know these things and see these things. How do you work on that, Peter?
Well, I think bumping your head a few times can help you learn. Unfortunately, sometimes the best way to learn that situation is to look back on how some things that in your mind had a deal written all over it, and it just didn't come together. And what role did we play? Did we push our client into negotiation fatigue, or
Yep.
did we not offer the proper counsel to them to say, listen, we're within that range of success. I feel like we've pushed really hard on this person, and we're where we should be. Um, is it really worth going back for that $2,000,
Right,
you
right.
know, peg or whatever?
Yeah.
Um, trying to look at the whole. It's sometimes, um, at KW, we talk about win-win or no deal. Sometimes people interpret the negotiations as I need to ground the counterparty into the ground, begging for
Yeah.
mercy to have won the deal. And very seldom is that the case. It's different in different cultures, obviously, but for transacting business, we're looking for a long-term relationship in what we do. And sometimes,
And a lot of
if
times
we
with all sides of the transaction, right? I mean, we're looking for a long-term relationship with everybody.
absolutely, yep,
Um, and we're going to hit on some of those points that you just made. They're all fantastic ones. I would just add also in terms of practicing situational radarship, radar reading, whatever. In order to practice your situational radar, just use it in non-negotiation situations.
yep,
And just be conscious of it, right? So a great one could be during social gatherings,
yeah,
right? I
definitely,
mean, right.
yes.
And this is a game that you and your spouse or significant other can play together. And you probably already play it in some way. Have you never, been to dinner and you look around and you're just like, all right, that looks like a third date over there. Like they're already kind of comfortable with each other, like
Yes.
they're probably like made out, but whatever. Um, and so like we always do these things, and that's reading the situation. I mean, that really is, and we do it in a joking way. But then if you start to practice that in a more, focused way, it can be equally as fun, but it can be really also enlightening and give you a really, really good tool in your tool belt to do that, right?
Of course, yeah.
Cool. Anticipation. Look, anticipation is one of the great things of negotiations. It's one of the pillars of negotiations. If you don't know the objections, the questions, the responses that are coming back at you, you're not in the right negotiation,
Right,
right?
right.
Or you don't have the fourth one, the necessary data and information. Like to me, the first three hinges on the last one, right?
Yes, yes,
I mean, we can know all the objections, the questions, and the responses that could possibly come at us based on the information we have. But if we have incomplete information, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have, incomplete lists of all these things and maybe not be able to anticipate as much as we'd like to. So therefore, I would almost, put this one at the top, right? This and the necessary data and information, because I think it's vital in any negotiation to know as much as you can going into it.
yes. You're setting some parameters for yourself, or setting up, or you're painting a picture for yourself by asking questions and getting this data, so you can operate as well as you can within that framework.
I was just thinking about what I was going to say next, and I always feel like I come across as the negative dude, because I was just going to say, I don't think a lot of people take the time to get the necessary data and information going into a negotiation. You know why?
Why is
Because
that?
Because people are inherently lazy.
Yeah, yes, and just because of what I do, because I work with so many newer people to the business, I think there's an excitement level when you're entering into a transaction that works as, remember Men in Black, the movie, and that pen where they flash the light and it
Yes, yes,
wipes the memory, like
yes.
that happens.
I wish I
And
had
people,
one of those.
I know, I would never leave my house because I would
Uh,
just keep whacking
Thank
myself with
you.
it. But
Yeah. I was just saying goodbye to somebody. I'm sorry.
that's okay. I,
They're finally working on the
where
bathroom
am I?
upstairs. Hallelujah. They're tiling upstairs, so they just left for the day. Thank God for that.
Fantastic.
Now everybody knows on Facebook land for whoever's watching this.
Um,
Yeah,
but
but
I do think that there is a, I won't say nervous, but maybe an inexperienced reaction to, oh my gosh, we're transacting business and we are rushing forward, ready, shoot, aim,
yeah.
or not taking the time to slow it down. And that
Well,
kind of goes back to your first slide of checking your body, checking the
yeah.
systems check.
And it also goes to this slide because when in doubt, ask questions.
Yes.
You just said slow down, take the time, right? I mean, and this is how you slow down and take the time. Even if you're smack dab in the middle of negotiations, sometimes it's okay to take a break or to go
Yep.
find some other information or to give yourself and the other side 24 hours or 48 hours or a week or whatever it is, right? But, don't just sit idly by then and just sit there and wait for this time, frame to elapse, ask questions, keep on going. Because as we said, if you don't have the necessary data and information, you'll never know all the objections, questions, responses that you need to know. And you should know the ones that are coming back at you ahead of time, right? People might hear that and say, well, I don't know how they're going to react. Yes, you do,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
yeah, part of that is repetition. And yeah, if you don't have a lot of experience, well, then find somebody that has a lot of experience.
Yep. And one of my mentors early on always talked about Columbo and how, be Columbo, keep asking questions. Don't be afraid to exhaust the other side with questions because the more you ask, the more you know, and the better position you're ultimately going to end up in. Just keep
Yeah.
asking.
Yep. Yeah. Um,
Don't dress like Columbo, though. I don't
no,
know.
don't
That's
dress
me.
like Columbo. But what were you just saying at the beginning of that? Because I thought it was just there was a brilliant like tie together on this whole thing, and now I can't remember what it was. But yeah, we got to slow down, ask the questions. Yeah, I can't remember what it was
Well,
now.
we were talking about like how some people just like are that switch flips for them, like I'm doing a deal, and they forget all the stuff and they rush right into it and expose their position and do all that stuff without doing the systems check. Slow it down.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think how can you work on emotional intelligence? How can you work on asking great questions? Look, I mean, we talk about that in other episodes. We talk about those things a lot, right? eh, you get great at asking questions by asking great questions a lot,
Yes.
over and over and
Exactly.
over again, right? I mean, there's no secret. I mean, there's no secret list of great questions that, like the top people have that you don't have access to.
Right.
First of
Right.
all, if you just ask them, they'll give it to you, because that's how most people operate. And number two, it's just common sense stuff. Just think
Yep.
about how, just think about all the questions you would want to be asked or you wouldn't want to be asked in a negotiation, and you'll pretty much get all the answers and responses on both sides of it.
Yeah, and stay away from yes or no questions. Design your questions to be open ended to elicit conversation and
Yeah.
um, deep conversation.
All right, so those people that don't know the disc is a personality profiling, tool. So how would you describe it? High Ds are what other people would call type A personalities, right? These are your bullet point people. Just give me the facts. They are just they're bulldogs. My business partner, Kelly, she is a high D, D, D. The I's are the influencers of the world. These are the people that they make good negotiators. They can kind of go back and forth. They people types things like that. The S's, these are your touchy-feely people, and then your C's are your letter of the law. We're gonna do things by the book. They're your engineers and mathematicians. Pretty good summary there, Peter.
Yeah, right on.
Okay. So here's going to be just some basic things in negotiations, right? If you're a high D, you need to try not to be too blunt. We had a good laugh about this at our meeting this morning when I was doing this with the team, Peter, because Kelly, as you know, um, tends to be blunt. She says it like it is. So high Ds have to try not to be too blunt. They have to work on their patience. They have to be aware when working with high S customers in particular. Those are the
Yes.
Healy's people. Those are the people that are going to cry when they think about selling their home where they have built 75 years worth of memories and, 17 generations grew up there.
And the high D is that's torture for them. But they if
Well,
they're aware of it,
yes.
then they get through it.
Yeah, they get through it and they can be a chameleon and that's a whole nother part of being, in negotiations and in business. So then think about, how would you work with a high D client, right? I mean, like you start thinking about these things, right? This is part of negotiations because very early on, and usually before negotiations, you will know the personality type of the person that you're negotiating with. Yes or no, Peter?
Yes.
Right. If you are a high I, use your charm and ability to talk to people. That's what I do every day. Don't
Yes, you are the eye.
I am the I. Don't lose yourself to disorganization. Be patient with those who don't move as quickly as you prefer. Yes. So high I's. I mean, high I's and high D's get along. There's some similarity there with kind of like pace of information. Uh,
Yes.
the horrible thing about a high D and a high I being together, because I was married to one previously, is that a lot of shit falls through the cracks. Neither one of us are detail oriented. It's really a weird dynamic.
Right.
But uh but it can work as well. I'm not saying that that is why we didn't get along. All right, so if you're a high S, you need to leverage your good listening skills. Yeah, high S's, the touchy-feely people, man, they're good listeners. Focus on service and relationship. Be ready to adapt to the high D's and the high I's of the world. Um, yeah, I mean, because yeah, that's what's got to have to happen. And if you're a high C, you need to leverage data, but don't overwhelm with it. Trust me, not everybody. Know your audience. This is really, really super important for a high C. In particular, I think that they can fall into the trap if they don't know their audience, and they can be a little bit deaf to this. I have found with high Cs, they're going to overwhelm with the data. Everybody's going to fall asleep or leave the room,
Right. Right.
right? And they need to smile so that they don't come across as chilly because they're all business. I mean, they're like, reading statistical, charts like it's, I don't know what, but,
Yeah. I
and they
see. I always joke is the person who like took their parents' stereo apart to put it back together again, when they were
absolutely,
six.
yeah. And in real estate, we joke about the fact that the high Cs are the only ones, including the agents who actually have read every single word of the contracts that they sign. Maybe that was a dirty little secret about the real estate industry.
Oh
Nobody
my
knows.
gosh. We have to edit this.
So stop getting ready to get ready, high Cs. Take action. That is another hallmark. So, you've got to know this. And now you can see, I mean, these are pretty, I love these bullet points around these personality types because
Oh, so great.
it shows how stark the contrast is between them, right? And it really gets you to understand that if a high C and a high D are communicating, like you've got to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody call 911.
Somebody call 911. Yeah, somebody might lose an eye. How well can you predict the disc profile of others, right? I mean, that's a good skill to have. You should be able to walk into a room, situational radar. Here we go, going back to situational radar, right? Practice this. Again, go out family dinners, social engagements. I don't care where you are. Try to figure out the is the person you're talking to a D, an I, an S, or a C?
Yeah,
And
this
realize,
is, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, realize that they don't, a person's not just a D, right? I mean, they have aspects of all of these. It's just that, one will be a dominant trait. So think of it. I mean, I'm an IS. Kelly is pretty much just a D. So you can have combinations of these as well.
For sure. I was just going to say that's where things start to turn the corner for you in your negotiation skills is when this kind of to me is putting it all together. It's not only understanding all the different personality profiles, understanding yourself. When you can start to identify your counterpart, you're going to have a much easier path of negotiating than without that crucial information.
Much easier path. Because when we get down to it, they talk about how do we persuade people, and reciprocity is one of those things. And think of reciprocity as just mirroring. People like it when people are doing the things that you do.
Yep.
So if I'm in negotiations and I'm a high D and I have a C, like I'm gonna meet them at their level because they're gonna feel more comfortable there, and then I can use that right to my advantage.
Yep. Yeah, so important.
So this was my quote, that just, that I love about negotiation, and it's about diplomacy, because I said, part of being a great negotiator is being a great diplomat. And it says, diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great definition.
It's a great definition, right? And I have to look up who Sir David Frost was, but diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way. And talk about like a true win-win, right? I mean, because if they feel like they're getting their way, but it's actually your way, well, isn't there's no greater win than that.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so how to guide others, this is the last part of this, is then, so we've taken this from what do we have to do, right? To prep ourselves and be ready for it. How are we in the thick of it? And now how do we persuade the people that we're negotiating with? And why is this an important part of the job? Well, again, if you persuade somebody and get them on your side, things are a lot easier, no?
Mm.
So yeah, the power of persuasion is a huge part of negotiation. So this is by Robert Cialdini. I don't know, Cialdini, have you ever read his stuff? I don't know how to
I have
pronounce.
not.
But anyway, how people are persuaded. And so I think there's like 6 or 8 of these. And the first two are reciprocity and consistency. So reciprocity, people like to mirror, what somebody else is doing, especially if it's something that kind of like they think is their way of doing something. So use that in your negotiations. And consistency, people like something that is a constant, that has been happening for a while. So draw on examples of, well, everybody else has been doing this, for the last 5 years. Oh, okay. Well, if everybody else has been doing it, I guess I should do it as well, right? Um, no, no, no. When I sold my house, and it was a difficult market, it was just like this. I did, forego, uh, I don't know, something, right? A home inspection, or
Yep.
something like that. That reciprocity, and then they say, oh, well, if you did it, then it's okay, right? Um,
Yes.
Along those lines, also social proof and liking. So social proof is nothing more than if a bunch of people are doing it out there in the world, well, then it must be good, right?
Yeah. That's that sort of comfort in knowing that you're not alone. You're not an outlier in this decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And liking, I can't remember what the notes on that one were. Authority, people want to negotiate with or be persuaded by people they deem to be an authority. So this is going all the way back then to where we should be able to anticipate, you know, the questions, the answers, and all that kind of stuff. But we need to have the data and the information, right? And that's how
Yep.
you the authority. And this is why you need to know your market. You need to know the other person's market. You need to know much as about the other person as they do. You know, You need to be the authority. That's how you convince people. People want to believe other people. And then scarcity is another way that people are persuaded, right? People always want to have what they can't get.
Yeah,
Uh,
little
so
FOMO type of thing.
get FOMO. So which tool do you want to work on some more? You know what I mean? Think about your own negotiating skills, right? How do you do on reciprocity or consistency or scarcity or providing social proof? You know, there's always areas that we can get a little bit better on. Um, how can you leverage social proof? I mean, it's out there all the time. I mean, you know, how you leverage these is just simply by using them.
Yep.
You know, how do you leverage? How can you leverage scarcity is by presenting the information. Um, again, that's not a magic wand type of a tool. That's just being smart. If there's scarcity, let somebody know about it.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, another thing that we always talk about, Peter, is that whole concept of, um, you know, we really need to anticipate other people's problems and then just provide solutions for them.
Yeah, and depending on that person you're dealing with, you may be the person revealing to them that there's a problem, and they've just chosen not to acknowledge it,
Yeah.
and helping them understand that and providing solutions or a path forward. It's really an amazing process if you're able to do it,
Oh my God.
with some empathy.
Speaking of paths forward, now we're going to talk just a little bit about, you know, to improve your process, right? How to build your skill around this. And the first thing is really about this concept of BATNA, which I had never heard of before getting these slides. And what BATNA stands for is best alternative to negotiated agreement. So in any negotiation, a no, right, or a walking away is just like the worst thing that could happen, right? You just never want negotiations to stall, then they're no longer negotiations. Now you have a dead deal.
Yep.
So, you know, what is the best alternative to the negotiated agreement, right? And do you know what that is? Is there one? Is there one to be found, right? But if you can offer alternatives, that can keep negotiations going, and it might be able to buy you some more time in order to get the people closer together. So all they're saying here is have a plan B, I guess.
Yep.
Avoid any verbal conflict, right? Keep your emotions in check. I
That's
mean,
a tough one for many people, but
it,
so
it
important.
it's so important. Yet, I mean, you know, my feeling is the first person to lose their temper loses the negotiation.
Yeah, lose and possibly torpedoes any hope of moving forward together because that almost goes to blowing the trust.
Yeah, I like this one. Track all parties. Who all is involved? Who is
Oh
the
yes,
decision maker?
yeah, and this is a major issue I find with a lot of new agents or new, people who are new to the business. They negotiate a transaction with somebody who doesn't have the power to say yes or no, and they say, "Well, let me speak to my wife," and you're like,
Yeah, yeah,
"Oh, so I
yeah,
guess we're starting over."
yeah. So go back to when in doubt, ask questions, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
get the information people. And you know, again, it's not always who they say it is initially, or you know, all of a sudden, you know, all of a sudden you find out that you're negotiating with 8 siblings when you thought it was just, you know, 2 people, right? So
yes, yep,
know what's going on in the whole negotiations and go deeper. You can never go bad by going deeper, right? What is the real motivation? That truly is your best chance of success because without knowing the true motivation of either the person you're representing or the person on the other side, where are you? I mean, you're truly, I mean, you can almost put this slide in as the very first one of the whole presentation because without the true motivation, right? It's hard to, you're not negotiating on the proper foundation to begin with.
these are the answers to the test. Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark.
Absolutely right. And to your point, we always got to debrief, right? What did I do well? What could I do better? What did I
Yep.
learn from this negotiation? Every negotiation is different. Every negotiation has learning points in it. Trust me. We've done a million of these, and there's always something that we could have done better. And that's just the fact. So how do you rate your own negotiation skills, and what steps could you do to, get better, right?
Yeah.
Here's another great quote. Place a higher priority on discovering what a win looks like for the other person.
Mm.
I swear to God, half the time people I've negotiated against are negotiating against themselves
Yes. Yep.
because they don't know what a win looks like to me. And they just keep giving and giving and giving when they could have had me, three givings ago. You know what I mean?
Yes. Absolutely.
And so, what does a win look like for the other person? Um, you know, uh, that's just going to be super important, and you really need to try to get that. And that's it. That's all we got for today.
That's awesome. That was
So
great.
I don't even know how long we were talking there, but it seems like we were talking for a while. So that's it.
Yeah. Good stuff. It's so important to be connected with all of that. Um,
Yeah, and that's
Negotiations happen all the time.
yeah, and yeah, I mean, in negotiations, and don't just think of it in the context of your own business life either, but I mean, negotiating with your 5-year-olds, yeah, you want a lesson on negotiation. I remember an 8-hour negotiation with one of the twins once on cleaning up a certain room in the house where it was a standoff for 8 hours. I swear to
It's
God, and I think I lost. It's brutal, you know what I mean?
that's
Like it's
I
almost
can see it on your face. Like I think I can concur that you came out on you didn't win that one.
yeah, but yeah, you can't win them all, right?
Nope. You
All
win
right.
or you learn.
So next week, are we back on Monday? Are
We're
we
back on Monday next week.
back on
Yep.
our regular time? Very cool. I love it. I will see you next Monday. Great conversation today.
Awesome.
Talk to you
Thank
later.
you. See ya.
Bye.